So all of this can be edited, so don't worry. It's like we don't
Awesome.
do a
Sounds
smooth.
good. It's very
Yeah,
good to see you. It's like
yeah,
the pure selfish thing of doing a podcast is that I get to see you now more frequently and talk to you. So this is
100%.
like a huge win, to be honest.
100%. This is it. This is why I was like, the biggest motivation for me is that I get to talk to someone who actually thinks in the same way I do, and that means that I'm not the only one that's crazy. Like, I can live with that. If we're crazy together, it's okay.
%. So at least there's another person sane in the asylum rather than the other way around. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Gosh.
So should we start there? Like, what is your motivation for? Wait, maybe who are you? Should we start with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, let's go for it. So my name's Meerz. I'll tell you what I'm not. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a professional podcaster. Not good at telling jokes, which is why I particularly like Christmas cracker jokes. But I do care deeply about other people. So I've always been a little bit idealistic, so I can't really understand when we just don't have a world where people just get along. Like, just get along. Why can't we just all be friends? I've always cared about social issues, I guess, again, in that same spirit. And the reason I think for me that this podcast was important, or why I feel like we decided to set it up, is because there is so much negativity and hate and isolation. And often you're sort of almost a bit gaslit in saying like, no, it's just you. Everything's great. Everything's fine. Like all of these horrible things that are happening are totally normal. And you do feel like, am I the sane person in the asylum or is it everybody else? And I think the hope for the podcast really from my side is that we can really share with other people, because you and I talk about this a lot. Like, it's not just you. Like, trust me, it's not just you. Like, we feel it too. Hopefully, as we go through this podcast series, there'll be lots of topics that you can relate to, things that you may disagree with. And that's the main thing for us. Like, we're not professionals in any way, shape, or form. There's going to be times when we maybe don't say it in the right way. We don't maybe always have our facts. So always do fact check us as well. But the intent is really just to create a bit of a community, make you feel like you're not alone, make us feel like it's not just us. And yeah, we come in with good intent. So please forgive us if we ever say something that may hurt you, because that's absolutely not the intention.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I think like one of the things I love most about you is that you are like the most intelligent but caring and humble person that I've had the pleasure to call a friend. And so the nice thing about that is I'm not a lot of those things. So like,
Please,
I
that's
don't,
too ridiculous.
so I like, as much as Mira is like, you know, I want people to feel safe. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna challenge people. Like I'm tired of people feeling safe all the time. let's agitate. let's get under people's skin and see where we get to. Like my biggest motivation for doing this podcast is to spend time with Mira. That's it. Just like I just like have conversations with you and see where we get to. Like if we can like help people think through what's going on and maybe take the time to do that, I feel like a lot of what happens is that things are so rushed nowadays and everybody wants to make a snap reaction and come to conclusions that don't really make sense, but are just what we're being told to think, as opposed to coming to our own decisions. If we can do that, I think that'll be a huge win. And maybe we won't all be running around like headless chickens. I think the other thing is, again, I think Mira's like the yin to my yang. And so whilst she wants to make sure that she feels like she's the same person in the insane asylum, I'm like, if I'm crazy, then so be it. Maybe I should be in an asylum, but like, I'm going to say what I feel anyway, you know? And if that, again, rubs people up the wrong way, then so be it. So, yeah, I think the nice thing about this pairing is that we kind of balance each other out. And hopefully, like, if you don't like what I'm saying, then you will like what Mara says. And if something Mara says doesn't appeal to you, then maybe you like what I say. And so hopefully there's something for everyone and we have like a really broad range. But, you know, we'll find out.
I love that, dude. Yeah, yin to the yang is perfect on both sides, I think. Yeah, we're a good balance. Awesome. So I guess in the spirit of the insane asylum or the sane person or who's sane and who's not insane. It's been a news cycle of like 6 full days. And I don't even know where the hell we start with this week, to be honest. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I guess maybe starting backwards might be the easiest way to go about it. And not that there's any easy way, but maybe less hard way. Like just like starting from sort of yesterday. So yesterday being Saturday the 24th, and I'm going to get some fish and chips for easy Saturday night dinner. I'm with my daughter and we go to the chippy, and on the screen is Sky News and it's showing another death, public murder of someone who is apparently a US citizen by an ICE agent. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we just saw this. Like, how's this? This must be a repeat.
Is it real?
This must be going
Yeah.
back. Like, how can this be happening again? Like, you would think that having had the first murder and all the protests that resulted in that, the world would be out like, look, just hold back a little. Maybe don't shoot first and ask questions afterwards. You know, maybe, you know, for it to happen again so soon, it's just mind blowing.
It's mind blowing, honestly. And again, and what I find incredible, I mean, there's so many things, I guess, but what I find incredible is there is so much video footage, right, that's being released now at the moment. And again, we're in yet another situation where this whole theory about self-defense just feels so strange to me and how they justify things. Because there was something like, again, fact check, but 6 or 7 ICE officers against this one guy. It would appear that he was on the ground when they shot him. The gun, it looks like the gun had been taken away or walked away, but which, again, as the news say, Minneapolis is an open carry state. Again, Second Amendment in America, right? How long have they fought for that, despite all of the school shootings, etc.? So you certainly can't be arguing about guns at this stage. But it sounds like you're only unhappy about it because it's in the hands of people you don't like, trying to actually defend themselves against government overreach, which I always thought was the intention. But it's just the cruelty of what comes next, like, which I think is, I guess, it's the playbook, right, love? Because I suppose if we think about the shootings, I mean, even if we go back to George Floyd, when there are clearly many, many others that have been murdered, what happened with Renee Good recently? I mean, the first instinct is always to just be like, oh, yeah, they're a criminal. They effectively, they deserved it because they were doing X, Y, Z. They were a criminal. They drove the car too fast. They tried to drive at me. They weren't driving away, or whatever the narrative that works is to essentially try and vilify the person. And they're trying to do that with this guy who appears to be a young VA nurse, who'd seen a woman be, again, pepper sprayed in the face, which again is wild to me. And then, yeah, they effectively, it looks like an execution. Again, based on the evidence or the information we have right now, it's just so heartbreakingly sad in just so many ways.
I think seeing how there's this impunity in which they use force on American streets, as though it were, you know, American forces in another country where they don't care about the citizens. There's just total disregard for life, safety, and this is the voting public. This is the part that I'm like, how can it get to this point where, as a sitting president in a democratic country, you don't care that this is what's being shown across all the TV networks, not just at home, but across the world. It's mind blowing to me. I say this as someone, and maybe we shouldn't like talk about this part. Like, we grew up in a time where we saw the end of Thatcher. We had John Major. We had, you know, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, all relatively boring political figures. And at that time, you know, growing up, I probably couldn't name many of the politicians from other countries other than the US, right? And so politics was something that was boring because it was just safe. There was nothing major going on, you know? Now, in hindsight, as an adult, of course, we have the Iraq War and a number of other sort of major events taking place. But that was like relatively isolated incidents. And that was happening so far away, still massively wrong, but so far away that it was like, you know, okay, as a kid, I didn't need to know too much about that. And as an adult, I kind of learned the ramifications of it. for this to be happening in the US, which felt like a really close nation to us, with the amount of media that they produce that we consume so wholeheartedly, I struggle with with that upbringing, with that background, with that foundation of principles. I
Mm.
struggle to make sense of this. Like, why is this going on? How is this allowed to happen?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? And I guess, I mean, yeah, it's such a great question, honestly, love. I think of so much about it as well. And I think the fundamental to me is it just kind of shows how fragile democracy is, right? It's so, so fragile and it needs us all to fight for it constantly. So, like, even to your point, going back to like the Tony Blair years, I feel personally, because I remember the protests that happened. I think it was something like 1 million people protested against the Iraq war. And he ignored it, obviously. He's pretty much classified now as a war criminal, illegal war. But I feel like that was almost the breaking point for us as a democracy here, certainly, because people just went, well, hold on a second. I thought the point was that you're supposed to be representing us, but it sounds like you're just ignoring us and doing what you want to do. And then it just got worse and worse and worse, right? Because then more and more people get disengaged. The sort of just, and it's also our fault too, for sure, because like how many conversations we had over the years where people are like, well, I mean, you can't trust them. Oh, a politician lied. Oh, they all lie. They all lie. But it's kind of like, but why did we accept that though? Right? Like we almost just sort of accepted it. And then we ended up with Boris, God help us all, and what an absolute cluster that was during a time in our life when we faced this obviously this massive existential external threat, effectively. And I feel like America's the same way, love. Like it's always been a really precarious democracy. It's always been a really precarious union. And all of these, Trump is the breakdown of all of the internal systems and processes that allowed him to become president in the first place. Do you know what I mean? Like even the fact that he was allowed to be a candidate in the first place, let alone win, the fact that he had had so many bankruptcies, that he had foreign loans, that he had money in foreign accounts and foreign interests, and there was, I guess, rumors even about, foreign interference or whatever. Like, how could that even been allowed? Like, how would you, like, if there was any other role, would you take the risk?
I think this is the thing. It's one of those things where you go back to like Reagan, right? Where like it was almost the fact that being a celebrity, being a star, was the most important thing, right? And because you've got Donald Trump on a popular TV show, having been on things like Home Alone 2 and all of these sort of things, and like I think even hip hop has this role to play in this, where because Trump portrayed himself as being a sort of
Hmm,
braggadocious character, quite a few references to Donald Trump in hip hop, right? So the
I
danger
didn't
just
know
becomes
that.
like, yeah.
Oh.
And so the danger becomes like gold. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're literally putting the sheep's clothing on the wolf because you're like, this guy is he's just a character, you know? He's fun, he's entertaining. And it gets to the point, just like Boris, where because they're so fun and entertaining, that you kind of forget that, oh, this is the guy we're putting in charge of our country. You like, I wouldn't let him look after my child, let alone the entire country. We just, it's just this smoke and mirrors effect. It's just this illusion that we just sort of forget. Like it's a Jedi mind trick. Like it's one of those things where I don't know if it's right to do, but I almost have to give credit to the guys that have done this because you fooled a nation, not like all in one individual. Is like, okay, that's something you might see, Darren Brown do on stage and hypnotize someone. To do that to an entire nation, US is 330 million people. Not everybody, all of them voted for him, but still enough voted for him to be now the most powerful man in the world. Yeah, that's insane. It's just crazy.
Because you're right, like you can talk about, like not everyone voted for him again in the fact that all of these things, kind of created the perfect environment for someone like this to prosper and for someone and for, the kind of Steve Bannon playbook to play out. Like, the kind of electoral college system, which just doesn't make any sense, right? It should just be one vote for one person. Things like the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be bipartisan law first, is completely not bipartisan. And also seemingly quite corrupt as well, based on some of the stories that are coming out of the US. All of the kind of checks and balances that are in place to protect against presidential oversight, like the House having the Senate, all of these things, they're all broken because, to your point, it's not just that he's convinced, or this cabal of people have convinced a nation that this is the guy, but they've also convinced a whole group of people who are taking an oath to protect the Constitution of the US that actually they should just forget about it. Like, really, the priority is just to do whatever Trump says. And that to me is like, that honestly just blows my mind, because I feel like none of our forefathers in the US who wrote the Constitution, or even in the UK, because obviously we don't have one, probably ever imagined a time where you would have a president or people that are there to represent the people that would kind of just hate the country, like almost like hate the people. Like, I don't even know how people think Trump loves America. He seems to hate it. Like, everything he's doing, he's just lit a match ever since he came on board. That's like crazy to me.
That seems to be the play as well, because I know we're going back and forth here, but even when you look at some of what Robert Kenrick said when he defected to reform, like his whole position was Britain's broken, it's a terrible
Ugh.
country. And you're like, if you hate this country so much, then just go. Like,
Exactly.
like, it's fine. Like, I love this country.
Me
It's an amazing
too.
city.
I
Like,
love.
for all its faults, I think this is a weird thing, right? Love isn't about sort of saying this thing's perfect in every way. That's why I love it. Love is
Exactly.
like, I love it because of everything it is and all that it could be, all that it was, all that it may never be. And that's the thing, like, that's completely missing from so much of politics. And I can only assume that a lot of these politicians didn't grow up knowing what love is, because
Mm.
you couldn't behave that way otherwise. Do you know what I mean? Like, just
So true.
like, like, so many of them talk about going to these boarding schools and, being, beaten in their sleep and having these terrible, like, things done to them. And I'm like, these should not be the young men that grow up to be leaders of any country, leaders of anything, let alone a country.
Right? I mean, honestly, if you take a step back from what's happening in the States and you look at their leader and you think, Jesus, this dude would really benefit from therapy. Like, a lot of therapy. Like, bloody hell.
Like,
God.
like multiple therapists at once tag teaming each other. Like, we got to work this out together, guys. I can't handle
To
this by
manage all
myself.
the different personalities as well that he has, seemingly too.
Man.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy as well, love. Because you're absolutely right. I never really thought about it like that, but I find it wild too that they are literally winning on a platform of saying that they hate their country. I think the other day Farage was encouraging tariffs, which make everything more expensive for us, which is again nuts. I think, and the irony for me of all of it is, it's not the country that's a problem. The people of this country I love. I love our Englishness and our, I'm sorry, I'm not forgetting about people in Wales and Scotland, Northern Ireland, of course, but I love our Britishness. Like, I love the kind of unique things that make us who we are. But the challenge is, it's the system, obviously, that's broken. I know people talk about this system, which can kind of feel really amorphous, but I think for me, it's the fact that it is this, I think they call it neoliberalism, which I still don't like massively understand, apart from the fact that it's a bit of a crapshoot, to be honest. But that aside, like, it's a system effectively that has put corporations and moneyed interests ahead of everybody else. And then they've just continued to accumulate so much wealth that everybody else is suffering off the back of it. And I think the thing for me with this unchecked capitalism is that the problem is you see this replicated all over the world, right, love? So everyone talks about immigration, immigration, immigration. But the point is, this spans from, like, I was reading articles about South Korea's housing crisis, Japan's crisis because they've got an aging population and lower birth rates. And obviously they're really trying to figure out how do they actually grow the economy and move things along. Obviously, all of Europe is in exactly the same position. America, Canada, like Australia. When I was in Australia, people were having these same conversations. And it's really easy to obviously blame it on immigration, but really, what is the one thing for sure that everybody shares is they're all part of this capitalist system. this unchecked capitalist system, right? So it's just so ironic to me that the people who are the architects, so Farage is the architect of Brexit, which has made us considerably poorer, clearly. Jenrick, who was a part of the architecture that caused austerity and all of the things that we're suffering on. Again, whilst wealth increased, the vast majority of these people have suffered, whilst a small percentage of people have had their wealth grow over the last sort of Conservative government. The thing that always struck me is that over the 14 years of Conservative government, yes, our taxes didn't technically increase, but also they cut everything. So where did that money go? That's what I've always struggled with. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right?
We need to bring someone on who can investigate that because
Yeah.
I feel like, and it's almost like finding someone who isn't part of any kind of like broadcasting system, isn't making like a living through appearing on shows, because otherwise they can't speak openly, right? 'Cause they'll never get another job doing that. But
Mm.
like you're right, like it doesn't make sense. Like the number of times you like thought about how since COVID-19 prices went up, and it kind of makes sense that the prices went up, right? Because everything was sustained, trade was reduced, people weren't able to do things. It wouldn't make sense. But the price never came back down. It stayed up, and it just kept going up. And it's like, wait, hold on, that's not what we agreed to. That's not the deal. Like, why are we doing this? And so you've got this weird situation where, of course, food prices went up. That caused a cost of living crisis. There was no investment in public services during that
Mm-mm.
period because, of course, you're not going to tax people more. You never get in power. You never get voted into power. But then you've got this spending on resources that's never been addressed. Like, I know it's a really tired example. The number of potholes on the roads these days. I'm driving home yesterday and having to like swerve to miss potholes as I'm going on the M25. And you're doing 70 miles an hour, and you're like, okay,
Wait,
in
on the
November, I just did my
M25?
on the
What?
M25, right?
That's
And like,
crazy.
I, I, I just did my MOT in December, and I had to change 2 tires. Each tire is £330. So I was vexed. Like, I'm like, I did not expect to have to pay this, but I have to, and so fine, like, just get it
Mm.
done. So now when I see a pothole, I'm like, that could cost me £330. Just scan the road ahead and avoid that. It's simple things, really. And potholes are the least of our worries in the grand scheme of things. But
Mm.
it's kind of like the most obvious symptom that there's a problem and it's
100%.
not been addressed. And unfortunately, it doesn't feel like any government's going to be able to, because who's going to raise taxes and who's going to sort of say, okay, I found this pot of money. I've
Mm.
recognized where there's been inefficiencies, and now I'm going to like rewire, reroute all of this spending so that it goes back to places it should be, whether it's, hospitals, whether it's schools, whether it's wherever it needs to be. It doesn't feel like anyone's going to do that. And that's the concern. Like, if any one politician said, like, when we get in government, we're going to work out how to spend more efficiently, that would probably prick up my ears. And I'd be like, this is someone I probably need to pay attention to. Although, having been burned so many times, there'd be so much skepticism that they could actually achieve it that I don't know where that would get to. But that feels like something that can be done, right? The inefficiencies, not in the Doge example, like I'm
Oh,
not
I
giving
was
it to
gonna say,
Elon to
dude,
do.
jeez. God, yeah.
But surely there must be a better way. Like it bothers me so much. Like I just can't feel settled with it.
It's super frustrating. And I guess, again, because I am an idealist, I think that the f- that in an ideal state, there would be the desire for us to not hate our country like Jenrick and Farage and people are telling us to, but to say, look, we love our country, but things are broken, and we as a collective maybe need to figure out how to fix it. I think the challenge is, and I think Reeves tried to do that for the latest budget, but I think the challenge is, for me, the problem is the working and middle classes are squeezed, dude. Like, people talked about the last budget as a attack on the wealthiest. That is, I hated that headline so much I can't even tell you. Because to me, it was attack on the middle class, or maybe even the upper working middle class and upper middle class, essentially. And the challenge is in this system where we're told that you need to work hard, you need to earn money, you can buy more stuff if you do it, and blah blah blah. If that group of people are squeezed, then it's a bit like, well, why am I bothering? What the hell's the point? Like, why get the education? Why go into debt? Why go into these companies if I don't really, I feel like I'm struggling. Like I can't comfortably still buy a house in my area or pay my bills or whatever. And again, it's not to say that they aren't earning more. It's just from a relative perspective. We don't want to essentially have a tax on aspiration. I do believe that. And my personal belief is that the corporations and the very wealthy have just evaded and avoided tax for so long. Whilst exactly in your pothole example of like, in order to be able, people talk about generating jobs, right? That's why they're allowed to get away with paying less tax. But they generate the jobs. But in order for people to get to the jobs, you have to use the roads. Right? You kind of got to reuse the road. Like you got to use the road with all the damn potholes. But if everybody's getting potholed up and their wheels and their tires are bursting on the way to work, how are you going to get productive people in your office? Right? If the transport system isn't working effectively, how are you going to get people in? How are you going to get people in if they're not healthy and they're not able to take care of themselves because they don't have a decent healthcare system that has vaccinations and blah, 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 whatever that is? Like, I feel like to me, the challenge is that the very wealthy and corporations extract so much, but they put so little in, right? Relative to the relative burden is on the majority of the people who are in the working and middle classes. And that frustrates me because that's to me is the root cause. And it's the only way to change that. And again, in the spirit of patriotism, like if you love your country as much as you say you do, you don't bugger off to bloody Dubai just to avoid paying tax. You pay your taxes in this country so that the people of this country can be uplifted, so that people aren't struggling and suffering and your workers are paid fairly and they get a living wage. Like, why is that? I don't get why that's not a thing. Again, I get it. I'm an idealist, but why? I don't understand.
I think also your point around like attacks on aspiration, I think is really interesting because it's almost like the trend is to like go as far as you can, as quickly as you can, like accumulate as much wealth as possible as quickly as possible. And I guess this might be like an Eastern philosophy, but there's almost a thing where I'm like, well, at what point will we be content? Do you know what I mean? There's
Exactly.
because even if you look at like Elon Musk, literally the richest man in the world, no contentment, like none at all. He just wants more and more and more. He's trying to fill a hole which can never be filled. And so it's almost like rather than saying allowing the sort of trend, the expectation to be, you know, reach for the stars, it's like no, like just have a home, like feed your family, have clothes on their back. You don't need to have the most expensive clothes. You don't need to have the most expensive car. Find contentment. Look, it's not a cool thing to say. This clip is not going to go viral as a result of me saying this. Nobody's going to agree. It's just not sensational. I kind of want the
Like,
government to do that. I kind of want the government to be
yeah,
grown up and say, like, guys,
exactly.
you're earning way too much. So, like, to balance things, you're in the top 1%. We're going to bring you down into the 5%. That's fine. You're still doing really well.
Exactly. And no, for the sake of a viral clip, love, I will say, I don't think billionaires should exist. And I think once someone has an asset or total wealth, that's total wealth, above, I don't know, 300 million pounds, they should be taxed 100%. That's my belief. That's what I believe. I do not believe you do not need that amount of money, exactly to your point, love. Even I've always been puzzled by this, right? And I say this as someone who's worked, and this is no shade on these lovely people if they ever hear this podcast. Is what's always puzzled me is so I've known very wealthy people and they have, they have 7 Ferraris and 5 Porsches and 17 houses. But I'm always like, but you're only one person. You've only got one butt. So you can only drive one car at a time. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is even the point of it? It's just something that's going to be sitting there so you can look at it, or you could say to people maybe, "Oh, I've got 17 Ferraris," or I just really don't know what the point is. And then and that's the thing. I think you're right. I think that's what I get stuck as well. Like, I don't think we're even saying, like, so you want to buy a home, you want to have a second home by the coast or in the, I don't know, near Lake Windermere or whatever, which is beautiful. Whatever it is, fine, right? As long as everyone gets the opportunity to be able to have that if they choose. But beyond that, like, what on earth are you? And that's what I struggle as well with this whole fight about inheritance taxes. So people like that dude who owned Pimlico Plumbers, whatever, him scarpering, that Rod Stewart guy. Like he kind of he looks like Rod Stewart. I forget what his name is,
Yeah,
Charlie
yeah,
something. I forget his
yeah,
name. But anyway,
yeah.
his whole thing was, oh, the inheritance taxes are too high. No, but the thing is, I don't mean to be funny, but you know that you won't even see it. You don't even need to pay the money. Like,
Yeah,
it'll come out of your estate. It's not like the government is going to be going to your kids and saying, your dad just died. Can you sell your house to pay me? Like that, it's all your assets and your wealth that gets taxed. And I cannot understand, honestly, that whole thing, that this whole fight, even the farmers and the value of the land, especially when the farmers themselves know that they are doing great things. But there are so many rich people that buy land because they get tax breaks. Like, I just don't get it.
so you came up with a really interesting thought experiment, and I think wasn't didn't quite see it the same way that you saw it. And I'm aware we've got 6 minutes left of this recording time, so we can start this thought experiment and then see if we can do another one afterwards. Seemingly we can, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to attempt it?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And what we could do in the 6 minutes is to share my crazy, it's not even my idea. So I will credit my friend Kay, who came up with this a very, very long time ago. And for sure, people are going to be extremely angry and probably turned off the podcast, but let's go for it. Like, why not?
Hey, at this point, what do we have to lose? We've got no viewers.
We got no viewers, exactly. I think my mum will turn off at this point too. So okay, so right. So my friend Kay, who I won't name because he to be fair, he doesn't know we're doing this. But anyway, a long, long time ago, he said to me, he's like, Mira, why don't we have 100% inheritance tax? And I was like, eh? What do you mean? He's like, literally, when you die, everything that you own goes back into a central pot, effectively, i.e., the state effectively goes back into central pot, and then it is shared out. And I obviously, the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God, you are crazy, Kay. What the hell's wrong with you? What about what people have worked for? And this is mad. And like, how could you do that? And you're stealing what people have done. And then in my wizened old age, I think it's probably a good like 10 years later, I'm kind of like, hmm, actually, that could be kind of interesting, right? Because, and the principle essentially behind it is that of the sort of 70 million British people in this country, every single person pays 100% inheritance tax on what's left when they die, right? So by that, that would include the royal family. That would include that Duke dude who owns a lot of the land in London, for example. Yeah. It would include all of the lords and the duchesses and the blah blahs who still, for some strange reason, own land in this country, even though we don't have this system anymore. And it would be, I don't know, Joe Bloggs, who is a plumber and who has accumulated a great deal of wealth for his family. He's got a couple of houses, etc., etc. And the principle behind it is essentially that everybody starts on a level playing field, right? Everybody starts at zero. So then there's certain inherent fairness in it. And actually, there's like probably a whole other segment we could talk about, but there's a book called Inheritocracy. And I was listening to the author talk about it the other day. And actually, the bank of mum and dad from the boomer generation are considerably contributing to people if they're lucky enough to have it, right? So that's the one part. The second part is by having all of this buffering up effectively of the state system, then we actually have money to do the things that matter love. So then we can reduce the tax burden on working people through their lifetime. Can you imagine that? Like, what if we then could actually put in a tax policy where if you earned above, I don't know, £40,000, then you start paying 20% tax or whatever it is. Do you see what I mean? And then you bump the bands up, for example. We have a school system that's properly funded where teachers are properly paid. We have police officers and armed service personnel and fire officers, etc. And we as a state as well, because they are public servants, and NHS workers, of course. So I don't mean to miss them out, but like even NHS as well. Why don't we start building too? Like, so you know, the old days, like with the factories during the Industrial Revolution, they built all of these like terraced houses for the workers because they wanted them to be nearby and they knew that they needed to have some degree of sanitation, otherwise they couldn't work, blah, blah, blah. What about if we did that? We built subsidized housing, good quality subsidized housing then from that pot for people who worked in the police or in the NHS or blah, blah, blah. You know, like, so we actually build a system that can actually help people while they're alive rather than this crazy thing that we have right now. And again, I'm not throwing shade on anybody because I understand we are where we are, but we're all having to just like wait for our parents to die to be able to like afford a house. I mean, like, that's so depressing. Like, think what we could do with all of this money, like properly spend. And again, then we, to your point earlier as well. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking up the 6 minutes. I apologize. But like,
It's good.
to properly, and to your point earlier as well, love, we then also honestly invest in proper oversight. And again, there is, and again, I don't want to offend anybody, but I think it's well known that public sector salaries are not at the same level as private sector salaries. So let's bump it. Let's pay people the same way we would in private and get them into public sector, and let's have the oversight. Let's have some actually efficient systems and audit committees, and also an innovation fund as well. Imagine what we could do if we built, and this is probably in the segment, but we funded research coming out of all of the incredible universities we have, like our own Instagram, our own chat GPT. So we're not so reliant on American companies. You know, we're generating, or like green technology, because I personally think that is the future. So like, imagine what we could do. And small businesses, sorry, as well. That's the other thing. Like, just give 100% business rate relief to small businesses, because small businesses are the lifeblood of community, right? Like, we're in an area that you and I are both in. We're really lucky. We've got a lot of like local, independent, family owned coffee shops and breakfast places, but not everybody has that, and they should. Our friend has been in Dagenham recently, and obviously Dagenham is making the press for all the wrong reasons, but it's sad to hear what's happened in that community. What would that do if you had 100% business rate relief? What would it do if we could actually reopen libraries and community centers so people could actually meet and come together, right? That's the positive, that's the theory. 100%. And it sets everyone on a level playing field, and it creates a pot of money that we can fund for things that will fund for generations to come, essentially.